Imagine you've completed a major project for a client, but there was never a formal contract. When it comes time to get paid, they refuse. What legal options do you have? This is where the doctrine of quantum meruit comes into play. Quantum meruit, Latin for as much as he deserved, is a powerful legal principle in contract law that allows for fair compensation when formal agreements are absent or incomplete. It essentially creates an implied promise to pay a reasonable sum for services rendered, even without an enforceable contract. This legal doctrine serves a critical purpose: preventing unjust enrichment. It ensures that when someone provides valuable services with a reasonable expectation of payment, they can recover fair compensation even if contractual formalities were overlooked. Without quantum meruit, people could accept services and then refuse payment on technical grounds. When does quantum meruit apply? It comes into play in several common scenarios. First, when contracts are incomplete, unenforceable, or terminated before completion. Second, when parties have oral agreements without formal documentation. Third, in emergency situations where services are rendered without time to form a contract. And fourth, when additional work beyond the original scope is performed and accepted. For example, if a contractor begins renovation work based on a verbal agreement and the homeowner accepts the improvements but then refuses to pay, quantum meruit provides a legal pathway to recovery. The law of contracts recognizes that professional service providers typically operate under written agreements. However, quantum meruit acknowledges the reality that business doesn't always follow ideal procedures. It creates quasi-contracts, legal obligations imposed by courts to prevent unfair outcomes when formal contracts are absent. To succeed with a quantum meruit claim, a plaintiff must prove several key elements. First, that valuable services were provided to the defendant. Second, that these services were accepted. Third, there was an expectation of payment when the services were provided. Fourth, the recipient had reasonable notice that payment would be expected. And finally, the value of the services can be reasonably determined. Courts typically calculate compensation based on factors including the time spent completing the work, the customary rate of pay in that industry, and the cost of any materials provided. Judges may also consider how much the defendant benefited from the services. It's important to distinguish quantum meruit from unjust enrichment, though they're related concepts. Quantum meruit specifically focuses on compensating for services rendered or work performed. Unjust enrichment addresses broader situations where one party unfairly benefits at another's expense, even without services being exchanged. While quantum meruit requires the provision of services or work, unjust enrichment can involve money, property, or other benefits. Quantum meruit is based on implied contract principles, while unjust enrichment is rooted in equitable principles. The remedy in quantum meruit is the reasonable value of work performed, whereas in unjust enrichment, it's the value of the benefit retained. Quantum meruit frequently arises in specific industries where work often begins before contracts are finalized. The construction industry commonly sees quantum meruit claims with change orders, extra labor, or emergency work not covered in written contracts. Legal and consulting services may involve work performed before formal engagement agreements. Freelancers and gig workers often operate under verbal agreements, where quantum meruit becomes relevant. Healthcare providers performing emergency services without prior consent may also rely on this doctrine. And in startups and partnerships, early contributions made in anticipation of future equity might be compensated through quantum meruit. Summarize, quantum meruit serves as a legal safety net when formal contracts are absent or incomplete. It prevents unjust enrichment by ensuring fair payment for services rendered. The doctrine requires proving that valuable services were provided and accepted with an expectation of payment. While distinct from unjust enrichment, both doctrines aim to promote fairness in business dealings. Understanding quantum meruit helps both service providers and clients navigate situations where formal agreements are lacking, ensuring that those who provide valuable services receive fair compensation for their work.